welcome back to another episode of Tales of Agmar. I'm your host, Sinjin, and today, as promised last week, we'll be talking about the Dragon Pantheon. So I hope you're ready to hear a whole bunch about dragons kind of playing gods over the world of Agmar. For those who are new or unaware, the Tales of Agmar podcast is a show about the universe by the same name, Tales of Agmar, and is explicitly written and designed by me, Sinjin. In it, I discuss the sections of lore I've written for my upcoming book series, which will hopefully be in the beta reading phase in a few short months. All right, so I've been world building this for a super long time. If you're here from the beginning, thanks so much for sticking around. Or started way back in 2020 with this project, only near this about, what is this now? This is episode 16, so for about 4 months now, I've been running this podcast series for you guys so that you can start getting a taste of the lore while we prep for that sort of soft launch of the book. And yeah, I'm really excited for it. We're getting close to the actual full editing section of it. I just got to finish tying up all of my notes and the book itself. But yeah, anyways, for more about this show specifically, right, it drops every Monday. Now, it was on Fridays, now we're on Mondays at 7 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. So I hope you guys will keep joining us at this new time earlier in the week, and that'll make it more exciting for some of you instead of waiting until the end of the week. I know I'm kind of excited to drop it on Monday. It's actually pretty nice to drop it today. Anyways, for today's episode, we're going to need some background on an event called the Passover, and this is not to be confused with anything in the real world. All right, just as a quick disclaimer, it doesn't look a ton like the Passover. If you believe in the Passover, this is not meant to sway you away from that belief or anything. It is not meant to change anything like that or be a sort of religious thing for today's world. This is just like something inside of Tales of Agmar that happens to have a similar name to that event, okay? So now that we're done with that disclaimer, let's talk about what the Passover is, okay? So the Passover inside of Tales of Agmar is the event that happened for the dragons when they crossed over or passed over from the mortal realm to what is now named the draconic realm after the destruction of the demons' arc ships. All right, so that's during the War in Heaven. If you want to learn more about that, you'll want to jump back to this past episode, two episodes ago, where I dived into what the dragons are, where they came from, how they ended up where they are in current Agmar lore. All right, and this specific realm, this draconic realm, lies as a sort of gate between the material realm, which is where everyone else is in Tales of Agmar, and the demonic realm, which is where the demons lie. In terms of, and this is mostly just in terms of like physically appearing to people. So people in Agmar can't really ever see what a demon looks like. They can see what a dragon looks like if a dragon appears to them in sort of like these in-between dimensions or inside their dreams. But they have never seen what a demon actually looks like. And so sometimes the demons try to sort of cast like this fake perception of themselves, or right, they use influential or very charismatic characters or people, right, to exert their influence on others, but no one's actually seen what a demon looks like inside of the Tales of Agmar. All right, and what happens with this, when they cross over, not all the dragons safely crossed over, okay? Some of them died on the material side during that war. Others during the actual like transferring process, they just didn't make it. No one knows why. No one knows if they got lost. They just got teleported to the other side of the galaxy. Haven't found anyone yet. And then some, right after they ended up in this new world, their bodies just gave out. They couldn't handle this different kind of existence, and so they just sort of peacefully passed. Not all of them were peaceful, some were a little abrupt, but those who passed inside the new world have been buried in the new world. Now, after a few decades, the dragons rebuild their empire on this world that they landed on inside of the draconic realm, but they've yet to try to leave this world, as it's like a big paradise world, super huge. They haven't even fully explored the entire world. They've just sort of built this civilization where they live for not a crazy lot of want now, because everything just produces food, and they've just kind of organized it, and that makes it so that no one really wants to leave, right? And also no one knows that they can leave, and no one's yet to try that, just because it's been a really nice world and they haven't overcapped on that population. And plus, when you're kind of messing around controlling another world, you sort of tend to stay in one spot, at least the dragons do. And so that's why they haven't done much. Now, for the Pantheon specifically, we're going to talk about 5 main dragons. Okay, and these are like the big dragons. These are the ones people like worship or put their devotion towards. And these are also the dragons that survived the Passover and still fight the forces of the demons on Agmar, right? So they actually came over. They're from the war in heaven. They're super old at this point, and they just keep on chugging along. So during the beginning of the dragon's colonization, right, of this new realm, they didn't know they could communicate with the mortal realm again. It was only after these things that they call viewing machines or viewers were discovered, unearthed, and powered on that they found out they could actually manipulate and kind of visit the denizens of their old home world, right? So they can actually kind of go back there in a sense through the eyes of other people. They've discovered some additional things that we'll talk about in a minute if we have time. If not, I might make a different episode. We'll just kind of see where this one lands. All right. Now, the first of those dragons that we were just talking about that use these viewers to communicate with the people on Agmar, we actually mentioned him last week, Dori-kai-ja. He's the patriarch of the Gearblades, right? So as such, he's trying to coordinate their operations kind of on like a more larger, like a macro scale on a anti-demon focus. So his thing is getting rid of the demons, right? That's what he wants to do. He wants to be able to fight them, either cut off their influence from Agmar, or if possible, just eradicate them completely. All right, and so because of that, he's trying to find out how to kill the Archon of the demons. First, he has to figure out who that is and see if there is some way to get the demons either out or to get people to the draconic realm so that he can take them out. That's his goal, right? And he is the dragon of the void, right? He's the master of the void, and it's him and his lesser dragons that actually make the blades for each of the gear blades, and we'll go over what that is a little bit later on. We're just doing a quick synopsis of each of these dragons. And they also are the ones, him and his followers, that direct the blade through the void to the gear blades when they're making their first call for their gear sword or gear knife, right? They kind of like sort of look over the person, direct which blade feels right, because really they're just like making blades constantly. There's a section of them that do that. And then there's another section that guides them around. All right. This next dragon we're going to talk about is Phil-lota, and she is the guardian of nature and life and is the dragoness, or I try and figure out some way to do like, female dragoness made sense, so we're going with that. Anyways, the dragoness that the Aurelians worship the most, right? So she's kind of their pinnacle of the Pantheon. They still believe that Dori-kai-ja and a few of these other ones exist, but for them, Phil-lota is the centerpiece of the Pantheon for their tribe religion combo going on there. All right. And in fact, this actually dates to before the dragons were even in the draconic realm. She's the one that first took a liking to the species back when the Agmarian Empire discovered the Aurelians. All right. And because of her huge connection with the species, she was one of the first dragons to use the viewers so she could check on them after learning that they could connect to the old world again. All right. It's also really important to notice that she is the dragon the priest and the priestesses prayed to in the Middle Kingdom for help with healing grievous wounds. That's her thing, right? We've got like nature, life combo there. That's why the Aurelians worship her. They feel like she speaks to them, gives them information on what they should do, what they shouldn't do, how they need to live their lives. And she pretty much does that, really enjoys it because she likes taking care of the Aurelians. Might kind of miss when they were a larger, more populous race, but she really just wants to see them live and thrive as much as they can. And as an additional note, the ironwood trees, which I've talked a little bit, but basically it's just a tree that has a really strong rating in like terms of strength. Like if you were to use it for a bow or use it like for a ballista, as we've talked about before, they can hold a really high poundage, a lot of stress tension there. And those ironwood trees are actually one of her creations from before the war in heaven, right? So she kind of developed this tree that was super hardy, could grow on a lot of different planets, and could be used for all kinds of things, both healing, as talked about in the Middle Kingdom. They take the bark of the ironwood tree and consume that for help with medicinal problems, mostly as like a painkiller, right? And as I'm going through here, I might mention something and be like, okay, I'm kind of confused. It's probably because I mentioned it in a previous episode, so you can just kind of comb back through the episodes. If not, feel free to just ping a comment and I will answer it to the best of my abilities, or direct you to the episode that it is in. Well, best of my abilities means I should be able to answer it. It's just dependent on whether or not you think that answer is like cool or not, to suffice your curious mind. But anyways, we'll keep going on these dragons. Okay, this third one here is Lordu-prime. They are the dragon of creativity. Okay, and they're a pretty interesting one to say the least. Lordu is, during her time in the mortal realm, so she's another dragoness, right? She was more of a performer than anything else, not so much a warrior, right? And she was desperately trying to make a show, a perfect show at that point, as much as possible, right? So kind of this like air of perfectionism. And if you remember, right, we've got a species now on Agmar, specifically a whole group of that species that's really about this perfectionism, really about making not only as much of something out of one idea, but making that idea perfect, right? And that's the Forgeborn. So she's taken a big liking to them, especially the ones in the Dinterlands, and as such has really influenced their economy and sociology, basically more so their culture, in the time since the end of the Passover, right? And that was specifically happened at the end of the Passover, right? Like after they passed over and started like being able to use the viewers to influence the denizens of Agmar, that's when she really got a liking for the Forgeborn and really started to interact with them. Before that, not so much, kind of here and there. But, you know, after you get kind of lonely in a place, you need people to admire you, and they admire her for her perfectionism, right? They get like perfect dreams from her and get like visions from her of stuff to build or things to do, and then they go do that, or at least that's where they claim they get them from, right? And that pretty much sums up for Lordu over here. We're going to go on to the fourth one. This is Noora-kai. He doesn't have a super huge following on Agmar. It's just like he's known about, and there is a library that kind of exists on Agmar that you could say is patronized by him, but not really. But anyways, all right, so before I get into all of that, just for a quick note though, he is the Dragon of Knowledge, but his story is a little bit different from the others, right? We talked about how all these other ones, they came in during the Passover and survived the war in heaven, right? Noora-kai actually came into the realm way after the Passover. So when the event of the destruction of the Ark ships happened, he was out past that line around the galaxy, right, the Scourge, and was in sort of that untamed area. The energy wave from the explosion didn't make it out that far to him, or at least not in the same way it did for everyone else. And instead, he continued to roam the galaxy for a few decades and didn't come into the realm until he realized that the rest of the dragons were still alive, right? So he actually is the one that repopulates Agmar with the different species that were loyal to the Agmarian Empire way back in the day, way back in the War in Heaven, right? He actually takes the time to basically reseed the world. So he's pulling humans from Elon. He's picking up Forgeborn that are scattered across and didn't die. He's doing the same thing for Aurelians, same thing for the Caravan, even like species. He got the ironwood trees back up and growing on Agmar, and kind of started everyone off at the beginning as sort of this reset of the Agmarian Empire in hopes that he would be able to build something great. And in that process, he discovers that somehow the demons are still alive and could still influence other people. I kind of talked about this in a short blurb thing I did on Patreon. It might still be bouncing around up there. At some point, I will make a whole little like mini book series, or at least a mini novella that goes over this experience for him, because it is kind of a big section of the lore of how everything happens the way it does now. But for the sake of right now, we'll just kind of keep it on the down low and not go into it super crazy. But he does his best to keep the knowledge together, hence why he brought everyone to Agmar, kind of let them mosey about and make their own things. He used to have an observatory above Agmar that has since left the like at least the space above Agmar. No one knows where it is now. But Noora-kai was able to cross over into the draconic realm to join his people, but he did not know that he would not be able to cross back until after he made it there. So he's now stuck there with the rest of them. Okay, and as that, he just spreads his knowledge now to those both of the dragon and the mortal realms in an effort just to keep people informed. It's more so the dragon realm, and then dragons might like inspire some writings in like the mortal realm kind of a thing, right? But anyways, so I'm gonna get like lost in the sauce here. Don't mind me, guys. Our last one here is Kai Thorin. Okay, he's actually the leader of the dragons that oppose the demons. He was like the basically deputy commander of all their forces, as the head commander ends up dying in the chunk of the Passover, like where they cross over, right? And as such is kind of the leader of their military. They found out they don't need a military, right? Because no one's fighting them. So instead, he's just the leader of the dragons that oppose the demons, okay? Though, interesting thing about him, he's rumored to have existed in the draconic realm before the Passover event, which is interesting, right? Because he was there at all the battles. And what makes it more interesting is that he has first accounts of all the battles that happened before and during the war in heaven, okay? So he's been like alive for a really long time, according to these rumors, has also been everywhere all at the same time. And since, usually when you're in a war, you have a couple battles that happen at the same time. Yeah, this guy has firsthand accounts of him being at all of these battles, and people know that he was there at all these battles. This massive empire, you might not realize it in the moment that this guy's everywhere, but now that everyone's like had a couple hundred years to reflect and sort of think about what's going on, they start like connecting these dots and spreading these rumors that, hey, this guy's been around a lot, okay? It's like really interesting. How could he be here and here when they both happened on the same day and were happening at the same time? Okay, and on top of that, he seems to have this general knowledge of almost everything in the universe, which also led him to knowing how to repair the viewers for the other dragons. Okay, and on top of that, he has this inner circle of dragons that know for a fact that he has visions of the future. Okay, no one else really knows for sure if he does or doesn't have visions of the future. The other 4 dragons in this pantheon do go off those visions in order to help them with their sort of crusade against the demons. But other than that, not much else is known about him. So let's get on to the lesser dragons, which is kind of like these 5 dragons, draconic followers. Right, so these are dragons that were born in the realm after the Passover. At least the majority of them are. Some of them could still be dragons from before the Passover, but they have all chosen to oppose the demonic forces. And they're in this interesting situation, like all of the dragon kind is, where they still need to eat and rest. Kind of, it's not exactly like eating regains energy, so does resting, but it doesn't have to be like a constant thing, like a 3 meals a day kind of thing. And they also have to breathe. But the whole idea is like they're still like using energy and they still need to replenish the energy, but their bodies seem to be able to take in more other kinds of energy now versus how we do, right? Where you take in food and it's like calories. They seem to be able to draw calories in a sense. I'm making quotation marks with my fingers, but across different modes and methods, sort of a thing. Anyways, on top of all this, they can still have like offspring. It's a little bit different from before, just in terms of length. Like it takes longer for new dragons to be born, but they're still kind of being born every so often, but no one's really dying either. And so it's like this weird thing where like your population's expanding, but they have infinite space to expand. So yeah, anyways, we're cutting a little bit close on time. So excuse me if this goes a little bit long, but this will be pretty quick right here. It's almost just like a bulleted list of what they do. And I can always go more into it later if you guys want me to. Just let me know in the comments down below. So anyways, the lesser dragons, all right, they sometimes form these small, sometimes medium-sized groups around one of the 5 dragons and act almost akin to like angels or messengers for the people of Agmar. Okay, so the first group is going to be the Tenebron Smiths. These are the ones that mine and forge the metal from the void and send it to the Gearblades that Dori-kai-ja chooses. And that's about all they do, so you don't really get any visitations from this group, actually. The next is going to be Phil-lota's companions. Their purpose is to help with giving dreams to different Aurelians and sometimes other species, but most of the time just Aurelians. She really likes Aurelians. They can speak in these dreams, and so it's more about trying to find the right kinds of words and feelings to send to the individual during the dream instead of just like trying to make like some weird complicated thing because they can't speak, you know? That comes into big detail in like the book and throughout Tales of Agmar. But anyways, next is Noora-kai's Keepers of Knowledge. They help him maintain his massive library in the Draconic realm, as well as take notes from his dissertations and write full-length novels from that, as well as about the events of Agmar, past and present. Finally, you got Kythorn's Diviners. That's his little group. They work directly underneath him to help discover what his visions of the future hold, and they use what they discover about the future to inform the other 4 dragons, help them fight against the demons, right? And they also try to kind of keep under wraps the fact that he can see the future because they're worried what that could entail for the rest of dragonkind if they knew that he could see the future. Anyways, thanks so much for coming, everyone. Please leave a like, comment, a follow, or subscribe wherever you found us. Really trying to grow this into a big community and, you know, get that book going out to as many people as possible. If you got friends who like deep lore, please come invite them. The lore gets like super deep, and I have so much more to talk to you guys about. I'm trying to find the best way to present it to y'all. I also have art in the works. We are getting that along, hoping to kind of get a little piece here in the next maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Have some kind of piece of art out, just so you guys can see what we're going for in that department. And that will be posted on the Ko-fi so that y'all can see. And if there's anything free to download, I will also inform you guys how to get it, how to download it, and it more than likely will be through the Ko-fi. Just because I want there to be a reliable place where you guys can download stuff from. I don't want to just have it be like a random link. But anyways, I also, let me know how the new time is. I really hope you guys like it as much as I do. And until next week, have a good one.